Can I just take a step back a little bit, because a lot of the guys
Sure.
out there, especially some of the younger powerlifters that are coming sort of up and coming and just entering the scene in the last sort of 5 years, let's say, might not know everything about you, and particularly the American scene. Can you give us a bit of an idea about who you are and some of the big achievements that you've had over the years?
Yeah. Yeah. I started lifting when I was 12 and a half. A lot of that was to get away from my home, but where I grew up, because my dad had found out he was terminal and was dying of cancer. And by that time, it had affected his brain to where he didn't know who I was, or um, like it was just a weird thing to go through at 12 years old. And like when you see your dad and he's shrinking away, but he doesn't know who you are
Mm.
because he thinks you're still a little, like you still thinks you're 3 or 4 years old and you're 12, 13 now.
Yeah, yeah.
So a lot of it was just to go away to the gym, just to kind of get away from that home stress. And I ended up meeting two other guys that became my father figures throughout my teens and 20s, Tim Smith and Jim Dawson. Now, both of them were amazing lifters at their times. Tim Smith was a 500-pound raw bencher at 181 pounds body weight, and Jim Dawson was a 744 deadlifter at 220 body weight in 1969, when the
Jeez.
beginning of powerlifting was just starting. So he was one of the strongest deadlifters in the Midwest,
Mm.
and they just happened to be in my little fucking hillbilly hometown,
Yeah.
right? And they see me in sixth grade, and they think that I'm in high school because I'm already like 170, and they're like, "Hey, you need to start working out with us, you know." And I was like, "Well, I want to be a bodybuilder." And they're like, "You're not fucking built to be a bodybuilder. You're built to be a fucking powerlifter." But when you're 13, you don't know.
Mm.
And so, long story short, I work my way into the gym, and they start training me, and the training goes really well. I do my first bench press meet at 13, hit 250. There, not soon thereafter, hit over 300. And then, so the bench came very natural to me because I was a very good swimmer when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And then as I got older, I wanted to be a better deadlifter and a squatter, but because of my car accident, I was hit on a bicycle by a drunk driver when I was 6 years old, and I was had to go through three leg surgeries, shattered pelvis. So I was bedridden and homeschooled the entire first grade, and I was able to walk with a cast on my right leg, second grade. So my legs were always behind, and
Mm.
that was people would pick on me in school for my calves being small because it was I couldn't move for a whole year, and so that created kind of a mental issue with wanting to fix the problems all the time. Like I never wanted to be the kid that was made fun of, or the kid that stood out because I had some kind of a deformity, which I almost took at an OCD level. Well, by the time I'm 12, 13, I'm walking in the grocery store with my mom, and I see like a muscle and fitness magazine, and I see these professional football players, and they're showing their workouts, and I'm sure they're not what they're doing, but you know how it goes back then. Like you see a guy like Bo Jackson, or I'm trying to even think of the names, like Herschel Walker, and these guys, like, and they're showing their workout stuff, and they have these jacked legs. And I'm like, well, maybe
Yeah.
if I go work out, my legs will get bigger, and my calves will get bigger, and I won't look like a fucking idiot in school, right? I mean, that was the draw,
Yeah.
because that's what the bodybuilding thing was coming from. And plus, I knew in seventh grade was the first year I was able to put pads on for football. Well, all the kids that were bigger or stronger or faster, they all wanted to play football. And I knew I had the upper body strength to do it, but my legs were way far behind. So I started squatting and deadlifting,
Mm.
which, I mean, who thinks of this at 12 and 13 years old? I mean, it was just by pure luck and basically being, partially insane. And so I run into Dawson, I run into Timmy. They start training me. By the time I'm 16, I'm winning Indiana State powerlifting meets. By the time I'm 19, I win my first worlds, and that's when I bench my first 500 and squat my first 700. Then I go to college, and I start the college ranks. And then by the time I'm a junior, I've broken all the collegiate national records
Mm.
in our drug-free IPF category. 2004 is my last year as a junior, and I end up going to men's nationals and placing, I think, second or third behind Brian Siders and a couple other guys that were like, freaks. And I remember that meet like it was yesterday, because that was Brad Gillingham's last meet, and he was one of the best IPF super heavyweight lifters of that time. And I remember him and Siders battling it out, and Siders actually beat him. But yeah, so that was kind of my start of my pro career. I was already traveling back and forth to Westside Barbell. I had done an internship with the Indianapolis Colts. And that was a connection through my mom. My mom had a lady that she worked with, that her son was an accountant for the Colts, and got me in with John Toring, which was the head strength coach for Peyton Manning and a lot of the other superstar Indianapolis Colts. And I remember going in there, and, I was a strong, cocky kid, but then you get around these pro athletes and you're like, you're a fucking nobody. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I remember being like, I want to be helping these kind of guys. Like, because I never saw or heard of a job like that. I mean, to be fair with you, this is pre-internet, and I don't even know that these pro football teams have a strength coach. I just think these guys might have a gym they go to and work out in the city or whatever. And that's when I realized that there was a tier to like strength conditioning, because the only strength coach I knew of was the one that was at the high school, and he was the football coach, and he sucked. And then we had a pro football player that played for the Dolphins and the Bengals named Wade, that was the head strength coach at Ball State, which was my home school. And those are the only two coaches that I knew that weren't personal trainers. They were strength coaches, right? And so my limited knowledge of understanding that there were multiple tiers and I could do this at different levels, it started to open my eyes to the possibilities of being a strength coach and using that as a profession. Well, all the while, when I hit that first teenage Worlds, and I win that first Worlds, I get the testicles to message, or actually I see Louis Simmons at the Arnold Classic, because that's kind of the biggest draw in the Midwest, or it was back then. You drive to Columbus, Ohio, you go to the Arnold Classic, you see all the people you see in the magazines, the big powerlifters like George Halbert and all the Westside Barbell guys and everything were competing there. And Dave Tate and George Halbert and Kenny Patterson and Louis Simmons are walking out of the bench bash where George Halbert had just bench pressed 766 at 220. And I had just watched it on the screen, and they're all walking out, and they don't give two shits about being at the Arnold. They hate the fucking place. They don't want to talk to people, because to them it's a bunch of posers. It's like they're like the Hell's Angels of powerlifting.
Yeah.
And so imagine a 19-year-old kid wanting to walk up and talk to Louis, when these guys look like they just got out of jail and would beat the shit out of you for looking at them wrong.
Yeah.
And people would just get out of the way. And so my buddy Brad Sheward's nubbing me, and he's like, you got to go talk to Louis, because you're not going to get any stronger if you stay in Indiana. And, at this time, I had just won a world championship as a teenager. So I'm thinking, maybe I can break records. Like, maybe I can do this at like the pro level. And so I finally get the sack to go up and talk to Louis, and he's asking me what my numbers are. And he's kind of looking me up and down, and he's like, well, get your fucking ass over here one of these days and you can come train with us, And I'm like, nice. Awesome. Yeah. So, it's a 2.5 hour, almost 3 hour drive one way to get to Louis' gym. So I'm in another state, and so about a week and a half later, I show up at Westside Barbell, and the crew's training there, and they train at 8 a.m. Well, that's a 3 hour drive. So I'm getting up at 4:30 in the morning to go and train with the guys in Columbus, right? Having to borrow my mom's car, driving to another state. I mean, this is shit like a 19-year-old kid wouldn't have thought of back in 1999, right? Barely had cell phones, and I don't even think I had a cell phone at the time. And so I get over there, and I don't realize what I'm stepping into. So there's a huge guy there. His name is Tilt. He's a big 400 plus black guy that's just a fucking monster. And he was fat, but he was super strong too. And we got into doing those tricep rollbacks that Louis always liked to do off the floor.
Yeah.
And this was after we were doing our main lift. And we start with 60s, or like 30 kg. So we start with 30 kg in each arm. Each of us get 10. Louis like, go up another set. So we go up to like 70s or like 35 kg. We hit those for 10. We go up to like 40 kg. We go up to 50 kg. Now we're doing these with 100-pound dumbbells. And what I don't realize is that Louis is testing not only me, he's testing this guy Tilt to see what his competitive nature is. Because if this teenage kid that underweighs him by 120 pounds beats his ass on this exercise, unbeknownst to me, he's going to throw him out of the gym. So we're doing this with 100-pound dumbbells, and I get like 8, and he gets like 6. Well, a week or so later, I come back to lift with him again, and the big guy's gone. And I'm like, Louis, where's the guy I worked out with yesterday? You beat him the last time you were here. He's kicked out. You're taking his place.
Damn.
That was the competition level that we had at that gym. I mean, it was like
No wonder
that. But then I also knew that I was always on the chopping block, and that, you know, I had to bring 100% every time I came to the gym. It wasn't like you paid a gym due and, like, you know, you just showed up and gave half-ass effort. It was like every day was a fucking war. And that's when I started to realize, like, that's probably what's going to make me a champion.
Definitely.
So, yeah, so that started. I became a Westside Barbell member, which was a huge shakeup in the USAPL community because that was a drug-free community. And I was still going over to Westside Barbell drug-free, but you could imagine how many times I got drug tested because of my affiliation with Westside Barbell.
100%.
Yeah. Right? So they're busting my fucking ass. Every meet, I'm taking a piss test. So long story short, I end up taking my undergrad to a master's degree. I end up squatting 900 my first year as a master's student. My second year, my final year as a master's student, I'm so drenched in school and as a GA, which means I worked for the athletics department for them to pay for my school. So I trained football, basketball, track. I was an assistant strength coach. And when that happened, I couldn't do a meet my last year because I was working on my thesis to graduate. I mean, it was just so much work. You know, you're doing 50, 60 hours a week in the weight room to train athletes. And then you're also, you know, working on all your schoolwork at a master's level. And keep in mind, I'm going to the #1 school in exercise science in the world. Dr. Kramer, Dr. Kostel, Dr. Volek, Dr. Newton are all there. They're all doing shit that's insane because we have contracts with NASA. We're working with astronauts and getting all these big contracts and grant money to do all these strength and power researches. Because a lot of people don't know is, like, when you go up into outer space for like 7 to 10 days, you lose anywhere from 30 to 50% of your strength because you're not in gravity anymore. It's just gone. And so we were trying to figure out, how do these guys stay in shape in the shuttle, right? And so that was kind of my coolest thing I think I did in school as far as that is concerned. As soon as I graduate, I literally within the week pack up and move to Columbus, Ohio full time to train at Westside Barbell. That within 8 months, I squat 1,003. Keeping in mind, I'm just out of school. So I hit my first 1,000 squat in Las Vegas at the APF seniors. I go to the WPO, which was the biggest meet at the time. And that's when the pro career started. So 2008, I break my first world record total. 2009, I best that total and best my squat. 2010 was a shaky year because I started my business. And so that was kind of taking over a little bit of my timing. So that's when the gym started. And I had separated, I mean, without getting into all the shit with Louis Simmons, if people want to watch the whole debacle on that, you can watch Westside versus the World documentary that's free on YouTube, and you can see the shit that Louis and I went through and what ended up happening with all that. But it's a long story to go into, but they were pretty factual in the documentary. So if you guys want to check that out, you can. And then 2011 is when I'm the lightest man to squat 1,200 pounds. But there was goods and bads to that. So I squat that 1,200 right at 300 pounds body weight. So we're doing a 4 times body weight squat at 300 pounds. And when I picked that weight up out of the rack, I remember the distinct feeling of feeling my femurs actually bow. I don't know what bone flexing, I don't know how to describe what that feels like.
Yeah, that's brutal.
But it was where my testicles started to disappear with doing those kind of weights. You know, it's like, it's one thing when you get your muscle a little pulled or you get a little strain here and there. And it's another thing when you feel your skeleton wanting to blow fucking apart.
Yeah.
And so that's when I was kind of like, man, I need to back this down because I'm going to get fucking, like, I'm not going to be able to walk. And so my next step was, I remember George Halbert calling me. He goes, "Hey, what do you feel about trying to work on benching 600 raw?" Because you got to remember at this time, everything was gear. Like,
What
if
year
you
is
wanted to lift
this?
it,
Sorry, dude.
2012,
2012.
2011, 2012. And you could see it in Powerlifting USA and a lot of the powerlifting things as everything was starting to transition to raw,
Mm.
right? The equipped lifting was, the numbers were getting crazy and people wanted something they could relate to. You walk around the grocery store and somebody sees that you work out and you tell them you bench 850 pounds.
Yeah.
It doesn't relate to people.
No.
But if you bench 500 or 600 pounds raw, it's almost more impressive because they can relate to the weight.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like a normal lifter might, if a good guy in a gym benches 315, everybody's, wow, you're pretty strong.
Mm.
So 2 times that is crazy, but like 3 times that is like unfathomable and people just can't understand the math.
I think with
So
an average person as well, once you get to certain numbers, like it doesn't matter how much further it gets, it just seems ridiculous to the average person. Like
yeah,
to an average person, if you say I squat 800 pounds or 1100 pounds, to them, it ain't going to register the difference. They're just going to think, oh, holy shit.
yeah, exactly. You tell somebody, I mean, I'll walk into a place now and somebody asks me, "Hey, how much do you bench? You're fucking huge." And I'm like, I just tell them 405 because that's still crazy as shit to them and they don't know any different.
Yeah.
When I tell them 600, it's kind of like way too crazy. So unless somebody's an avid lifter and I can tell they put the time, effort, energy into it,
Mm.
there's no sense in going over 405 when you're talking to people because they just don't get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
So I did that. And then, so George Halbert, a 12-time world record in the bench press, he wants to break Mike McDonald's bench press record at 198, which was 582 or 580. It was 580 something.
Mm.
And he's like, "I need a training partner to train for this because we were all coming out of gear." And I'm like, "Well, fuck it, I'll do it. And so we end up training for the meet. George ends up getting injured. And then I benched my first 600. Now, you got to remember, this is 2012. So when I benched 600 pounds, I only weighed 294. And I would think I was only the 13th guy ever to do it.
Mm.
So that was a huge like nail in the coffin with Louie and I's relationship because now I'm doing raw shit and I'm getting a lot of credibility because I'm out of a bench shirt, right? And people are like, "Oh shit, he really is strong without any of this equipment."
Yeah.
So 2013, I signed up for my first completely raw powerlifting meet and no sleeves either. I just posted that video, I think on my Instagram channel. You guys might have seen it, but I get to the meet and don't even realize it's USPA and it's walked out. So I got, not only do I have to walk out the lift, I'm only wearing a belt and a singlet. And I don't, the sleeve stuff I didn't really get. I'm like, just go completely knee, sleeveless, wrapless, 100% just skin and belt, right?
Mm.
And so I end up hitting the second highest squat of all time raw. And Scott Weech had the world record at 826. Now, keep in mind, Don Reinhold had the world record at super heavyweight at 910. And Kirk Kowalski, Captain Kirk, had the world record squat at the next weight class down at like 816. So Scott Weech was sitting at 826. And so then I hit right under 800 at that meet, walked out. And I'm like, I think I can break the world record squat raw. So I bust my ass, design all my training protocols, and I show up at Raw Unity, which was in Florida. And that's when I broke the world record squat. And then I benched 606 in a full contest. So I'm almost at a 1,500 pound subtotal, with no person under super heavyweight had ever really done.
Mm.
And that's when I started to get really popular in the raw scene. This is 2014. 2015, I barely miss a 912. I can't remember the kilo, 912 squat. And so that kind of fucked my whole meet up. But 16, I came back and I broke the world record total and the world record squat. So I did 865 and a half on a second attempt. And then I benched 611. So now I'm doing 865 and a 611 bench in the same meet. But at that point, I'm older. I'm like in my mid 30s, and I could tell no matter what I did, my deadlift was starting to come down. I just couldn't keep it.
True.
The deadlift was the one exercise I just couldn't figure out. It was an enigma for me, and a lot of it was because I just wasn't built to deadlift.
Mm.
At 6'1" with shorter arms, better built to bench. It was a long pull, and the bar was a solid 4.5 inches above my crotch at lockout.
Shit.
So there was not really a lot of leverage that I had in the deadlift. So to pull 800, I had done it a couple of times in meets, but I couldn't hold on to it in my mid 30s. And then after I'd done that, I tried one more meet, and my body was just telling me it was time to stop, and I retired at 38. So I go back into just training normal. I lean out a little bit more. I get down to the 280s for about 100, and I guess that'd be 125 kg for you guys, maybe. I get down to that weight, and Mike O'Hearn challenges me. We've been friends a long time. He's like, how many times do you think you can squat 500? And I'm like, I don't know, 20. And he goes, well, let's challenge it. He goes, I'll do it next week, and you do it the week after. And I want you to talk shit to me on the internet, right? Because it's kind of, I think a lot of people don't understand, like, some of these guys are in cahoots and they're playing off of each other just to get the views up.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, yeah, dude, I'll beat your fucking ass. I don't have a problem with that, you know? And so he ends up doing like 16, and I do like 20.
Yeah.
Well, I can't remember. I think Bill Kazmaier gets a hold of me, and we've been friends a long time, and we have a lot of mutual respect. Obviously, everybody respects Bill Kazmaier, and the dude's a fucking legend, right?
Definitely.
But he respected me because he saw me do it in equipped, and then saw me do it raw, and then saw me get these degrees, you know. And if you see on my website, on a couple of clicks, you can look on, I think on online coaching, we have an excerpt that Kazmaier spoke very highly of me. But long story short, he goes, you know how close you are to breaking Tom Platz's squat record?
Yeah.
And I'm like, what squat record? Because I didn't know anything about it. And he goes, you got to do like 520 for 24, and you will beat Tom Platz's all-time squat record that nobody's been able to touch. And by the way, I think because I was at that contest when it happened, that at least one of the plates was fake.
Oh, true.
And I'm like, what? And he goes, yeah. And he goes, and he was wearing a fucking squat suit when he was doing it. You can totally beat him. And I'm like, shit. So now I got a goal, right? It's not a world record, like as far as powerlifting is concerned, but it's something that's totally insane.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this might be fun, because at this time I'd already developed the Wenning warm-ups. I was already doing sets of 25 for a lot of different stuff before I'd even do the compound movement, because to maintain work capacity, right? And so it was kind of like, well, let's see what I can do. So for about 2 months, I started to train for it. So what I would do was, at the end of a workout, I did the first week, I did 135 for 25, right? No big deal. Then the next week, I do 185 for 25. Then the next week, I do, just to kind of get because in a conjugate system, I didn't squat with a straight bar every week. So I had to get comfortable being under that much pressure with the bar on my back consistently in order to kind of, you know, get the specificity out of the training. Next week, I do 225. Next week, I do 275. Then I take a week off. Then I come back and do 315. And that's when I'm like, okay, we're just going to jump 200 and whatever pounds, 205 pounds, and we're going to go for it next week. So I deload, I recover, eat a little bit more calories to get up to about 291, I think. And I do 520 for 24.
Nice.
And when I did that, I noticed that, you know, like, you guys have all strained your asses off before, I'm sure, enough to get sick. And so I get that done. I set the bar in the rack, and the video doesn't show it, but I get on the floor, and I can't breathe, and I can feel my heart rate's just totally crazy for maybe about 15 minutes. And I'm in pretty good shape. So I'm thinking, like, what the fuck? Like, you know, and I remember going home, I take a shower, and I'm closing my eyes, washing my hair, and I can just feel my body bobbling. And I'm like, something's not right. And so I end up going to the doctor, and they run some more tests. And that's when I noticed that my kidneys were starting to shut off. And so I go to a kidney specialist, and he's like, I'm going to tell you flat out. He goes, I've never seen anything like this. He goes, it appears that your body's lived in rhabdo for about 20 years.
Shit.
And you've created some damage in your kidneys. And I was like, well, yeah, when I was younger and squatting those big weights, I was popping blood vessels in my skull and my eyes. Well, what people don't realize is when you do that, you're popping that shit around your kidneys too, because they're real small, little tiny vessels, and they get scarred up, and then they don't work well. And so they ended up, you know, doing some different measures. I went and got some stem cells, and we stabilized the problem. But yeah, it was a weird wake up call. And he goes, honestly, I've never seen anybody. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that I didn't take anabolics to get to that level, but I
Mm.
was always cautious with the amount that I took, and it was always under doctor prescription.
Mm.
I wasn't just blasting bathtub shit. You know what I mean? I was usually floating right around 1,000 in my testosterone levels, which high natural is 900.
Mm.
So, and people won't believe that, and I know that that's going to get a lot of flack, but it's true. I never really went above 1,000 because if I did, I tried it a couple of times. I felt like shit. I ended up getting the flu. I get sinus infections because my blood pressure was too high, and then I just couldn't take anymore. So I just floated right at 1,000, enough to recover from the training, and that was all I was ever able to take. It felt like, because I had to feel athletic to do those numbers.
Mm.
And so that kind of created a different scenario, and I started dropping some more weight down. Now I'm like 247, and I ended up just squatting 700 again, and it was pretty easy about a month ago. I benched 500 around, I think, July. And so my strength has stayed up there pretty well with losing 60 pounds of body weight,
Yeah, definitely.
roughly. And now I'm 46, but so I just needed a new goal. So I started attacking the PhD, and that's kind of how all that shit went.
A big thanks to Matt Wenning for coming on the channel and sharing his amazing story and his crazy insights and experiences with the legendary trainer Louis Simmons. If you get time, please go and check out his channel, Wenning Strength. It's packed full of amazing content, and Matt is a true pioneer and legend of the sport of powerlifting. If you enjoyed the content, please like and subscribe. And for the full podcast, please check the link in the description. And for the lads, I'll see you next time.